today we're here with Randy Veitenheimer, and the book that we're going to be reviewing is The Secret Life of Plants. Hi Randy, how are you?
I'm doing well.
So, why this book? What is your history with The Secret Life of Plants?
That's where the story begins, okay? People have asked me, how did I get started on this journey? So today kind of represents a 50-year anniversary of where I started and how I started to do energy work. The use of energy and its application to people and their health, their wealth, their well-being. So when I lived in Monterey, California, around 1973, actually right before the book was published, I was looking through the Monterey Herald, which is a newspaper there, and there was an ad. I always read the one ads, and it said Philosophical Roundtable Meeting, 7 p.m., Asilomar, California. And I looked at that ad and go, I think I want to go to that. I have no basis for that decision. There was no, at that time, I didn't think intuition or anything. It just sounded interesting to me. So that Tuesday evening, I showed up and knocked on the door because the door was closed. And a man answered, and he goes like, "What do you want?" And I'm like, "I'm here for the meeting." And he says, "This is a closed meeting."
Oh,
right?
Wow.
And I went like, "Well, there was an ad in the paper." And at that point, this lady came up behind them, Jessica. And she was probably my age now at the time. And she took one look at me and goes, "Get in here," just like that. And I later was able to have a conversation. And the full conversation basically said, "Oh, it's you, get in here," right? So somehow she recognized me, even though I'd never seen her before. When I sat down, I found out that this was a meeting of all the West Coast psychics. And it was a closed meeting only for the psychics that they all knew each other. And so it was a group of people that came from San Francisco and LA and different parts, and they would get together like twice a year. And so I was able to go to those meetings for several years. And so that's how it started.
Okay.
I didn't know what it had started. I had just out of curiosity sat down, and they started in and started telling stories and things that they knew and things how to do things, and so it was very informal but very informative. And during the course of those, they would bring in other speakers, or people would get up and talk about what they were doing and how they were doing it. And one of those sessions, immediately after this one, a man named Marcel Vogal came to the class. And so in the book, it mentions him. And number one, Vogel was his wife's name. He took that sort of as a pen's name. And I got to meet her like 40 years later in Santa Fe. I was also able, through some conferences, to meet Peter Tompkins and the man who did the recordings, who actually did the electrical interfaces. And so developed quite a bit of background over the years just from this book.
Okay.
And then the other thing was that Marcel Vogel went up to the front of the class and says, "I want to show you something." And he took a pack of cigarettes and showed how weak his hands were. And then he brought somebody from the audience and had them stick it right here, and he did muscle testing. So that was the first time I saw muscle testing, or the interaction of the electromagnetic field, the consciousness with objects. And then it just progressed from there. And so over a period of 3 or 4 of these different sessions, he introduced the whole concept of using energy to overcome negativity or illness or poisons, toxins, everything that now is current terminology. But in 1973, nobody talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
So I understood why it was secret, because you couldn't talk to anybody. They, if you started telling them about their electromagnetic field or goes strong or weak, then you just lost people back then. But later, like after about third or fourth session with him and the other people, one day she goes, well, the third day we always open up to the public. And I go, to do what? And she goes like, well, each person uses a different thing, like pendulums or tarot cards or whatever, and they're just a tool to access their psyche or the field. And and so she looked at me and she goes, what do you want to use? And I go, I don't, just my hands, I guess. I don't have any of those. I've never studied any of those disciplines. And so she goes, okay. And so they open the doors and these people come flooding in. And this lady sits down and I basically say, what's going on with you? And so she told me whatever it was, and all I did was just reach over and tap her on the shoulder or hand or whatever and ask her how she felt now. And she goes, I'm good, right? So I didn't know what had happened. I just know that something had changed.
Mm-hmm.
And of course that put down something that for 50 years I've been pursuing. Like, what is this?
Okay.
Now, the book itself opens up all those potentials. So it actually represents like a college career. If you followed all the chapters of the book and did all the bibliography, you would be a very intelligent person, right? And then if you practiced any of it, which is what I immediately fell into, like if this worked with that lady, why can't I try it on other people?
Mm-hmm.
And so within a couple of years, I became popular.
Wow, okay.
So people would come to me and present problems, and I would energetically try to interact with them in a way that benefited them. So it all started with this book 50 years ago, and I've been extremely grateful and healthier because of it, and able to help a whole lot of people in the world.
So the energetic training that you're referring to, is that from your martial arts history or background?
Yes. At the same time, I was pursuing martial arts 3 or 4 hours a day and Kundalini yoga 2 or 3 hours a day. I was busy. But what I found is that the energy work and internal martial arts, Kundalini yoga, are the same. And the energetic work and the secret life of plants is the same. They're all dealing with the same subject. They're just coming at it with different ideas, different language. So one of the things has been that by virtue of being in all three disciplines, I've been able to integrate that information in a way that other people don't, because they tend to speak of it only from one aspect or from one point of view. And so when you broaden your horizon a little bit, it's like all this information is available if you can find a framework to translate it into.
Mm-hmm.
Secret Life of Plants gave me a framework. The idea of kinesiology, applied kinesiology, the idea of energy transference, and the idea of energy signatures. And so that's how this all started. This is the first time I've ever told people about it, because it never really occurred to me. But then when people start asking, it's like, well, how do you start? Well, this is how I started. So.
Well, thank you.
Hmm?
We have a question from one of our readers. She asks, the book says that plants have emotions and feel pain, and that some cultures used rituals before sacrificing the plant. How can one eat plants without actually harming them?
There's virtues in listening to rock and roll from the 60s and 70s. Bob Dylan wrote a song that said, God gave name to all the animals. Well, it's all the name, the animals, plants, everything. Out of that, I developed up an idea of like, how can you say something is something? Okay.
Okay.
And distinguish it from somebody else or something else. And the idea came to me, and I've been working on and come up with an idea called scalar harmonic signature. And by combining those three words, we can come up with a specific identity. We can actually put a number to it.
Oh.
It's similar, like in Bitcoin, to a blockchain. In other words, you arrive at a specific identity. So your identity in a scalar harmonic signature is specific
Okay.
and different from everybody and everything else. The harmonic portion is what we are attracted to and what shows up in our lives, and we're not going to get into that part at this time. Now, we relate that back to plants and like the consumption or animals, whatever. It's like another song in the 60s, I can't remember who wrote it. Can you hear the cries of the butterfly? It's in Inagata Davida is a song. So what people don't realize is that, just like in this book, they introduce the idea that plants have identity, have emotions, have feelings, have thoughts, have consciousness, and speak, right? In Native American culture, we go, well, yeah, everybody knows that. And then we find that, well, everybody outside our culture doesn't know that. So the idea of speaking with plants or animals or all that is very much ingrained in our culture. So when you find or come across an animal or a plant that you're going to eat, you would basically say a prayer, the equivalent of what we would say a prayer. And the prayer is thanking them. So in our culture, we find sometimes people pray over their food.
Mm-hmm.
They usually pray this way, and we were taught to pray this way because the energy in the hands is what comes in and does the work, just like when I touch people. So the idea that a plant has consciousness allows you to also have the thought that you would thank them, and in doing so, prepare them to be a part of you.
Okay.
And so, again, this is kind of foreign thinking even today, that we are incorporating, okay? And remember that scalar harmonic signature? Our signature is changed to some degree by everything we do, see, think, feel, all that. And that represents our reality. So when they ask, like, how do you eat the plants or animals, protein, then the answer is that you would thank them, right? And basically bless them for being a part of your life. So.
That is interesting.
And for their sacrifice, their willingness, or like we don't consider a sacrificial culture. We don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have the idea that everything is a gift. So the plants are presenting them as a gift to our own life. And for that we are thankful, and that's why we call it Mother Earth, Native American, and that's why we thank the spirit of all things, right?
So you know Marcel Vogal, and Marcel Vogal is in several chapters of this book because he's one of the researchers.
Yeah.
Is that how you found out about the book?
Yeah, I mean, during the classes, they would present different ideas and sometimes mention books or something.
Mm-hmm.
But when Marcel Vogel first started showing this electromagnetic field response of your reaction to negativity or poisons, and what he would do is stand up and show, like he would take things that were in an envelope. This is the basis for SRI, for Stanford Research Institute. It's the basis for all their psychic spy programs. It's the basis for remote viewing. All this was done with Marcel Vogel in the classes we were going through.
Okay.
So everything that I've come to, talk about, like on Gaia or whatever, I had a basis for it like 40, 50 years ago. And again, nobody talked about it, but like he would bring out an envelope and go, okay, put this on your chest and take a volunteer, and the arm would go up or down in kinesiology, depending on if it benefited them or weakened them. And so, what's in the envelope? Who the hell cares? It's just we know that it's either positive or negative to your health or well-being. And so that was the first like blind study, okay? And so that translated into, the plants he would use, and he was trying to find out the extent. And the extent of it is ubiquitous. It goes across all fields of interaction and human life, plant life, animal life, everything.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a researcher in the book, and first from a point of skepticism, and then from a point of embracing what the information was, and then all of us were encouraged to explore it and to develop, and that's when I said, well, I'll work on people, right? So I knew other people that worked on plants, and there's phenomenal things you can do with plants, okay? And the number one thing you can do is learn to listen to them. And that's a Native American trait, you might say, to be able to listen to plants or listen to animals. And of course, out of that whole thing came like horse whispers, plant whispers, dog whispers, all this stuff started, if you read that book and then kind of follow the tenets of kinesiology, applied kinesiology, you end up with skills, you end up with talents that make you far more interactive with the universe or specific parts of it than somebody who doesn't do this. That's why it's like a university degree to read this book and study it, and like I say, all the bibliographies. If you follow all the trails out, it's like following the roots out of a plant. You're gonna learn some things, right? Magic. So.
Yeah, I will say it did take me a little while to get through the book. It was a heavy read.
Yeah. And at the time, not having any bias about it, I just absorbed it. So, and then it becomes a way to kind of test yourself. You can test on whether you've helped something, and specifically like with a plant, you can tell if it's growing bigger than the one next to it, and like I say, the evolution of it is really funny because we did the thing with water before Emoto Masura.
Okay.
We did the thing with blessing plants and playing music for them before there were tapes that came out from Sadhu or anybody else that like, oh, this is relaxing. Well, is it relaxing for you? Is it relaxing for the dog? Is it relaxing for the plant? Those are good questions, right? And then the same thing for everything from the color of the rooms you paint to the clothes you wear. Everything becomes interactive. And of course, now we call that AI. So everything has evolved, right, in things that we already studied 50 years ago. Mm-hmm. And they're just now coming into people's consciousness, which I find highly humorous.
So, what parts of this book were the most important to you?
Chapter 10, let's see. Yeah, Harmonic Life of Plants. That's the title. So it's kind of like 50 years of trying to evolve what I do or what I know, and the concept of that harmonic shows up as part of a signature of identity. So now, if you look at that, that contains all our concepts of predestination, karma, attraction, manifesting. All of it's contained in that one word and basically in that chapter. And so we only see what we're in harmony with. We only interact with what we are harmonic with. And meaning sympathetic vibration, which means sympathetic magic in the old schools 1,000 years ago. So when you look at that, that becomes more of a higher order of interaction than manifesting or visualization or holding in mind or doing 5,000 repetitions or affirmations. It's a cleaner path forward in the way I work and what I present. So that becomes a very important chapter to me. Okay, it's just it took me 50 years to realize it because the language wasn't there, and so this is very much about amalgamating this all these different languages of martial arts and yoga and everything, and science and physics into a language that allows people to be actionable. Okay, so.
You had also mentioned before the interview that you like chapter 12 about the force fields, human and plant force fields.
Yes. I don't remember the song or movie or book. It's At Work in the Fields of the Lord. Do you remember that?
I've heard of it.
Yeah, and I think it's a book, but it's been a long time, and I read so many. But I realized that at some point I was a field worker. or, or in the old language, a field hand, right? Wasn't meant to work in the house. I was meant to work in the field. And so, in this case, fields represent a greater order of reality than physical reality.
Okay.
It's just that people don't have any cognitive realization of that. It's kind of like you're walking through electromagnetic fields all day long. You're interactive with those you are harmonic with at a scalar level. So that's where all that language comes from. And it all equates with eventually just you being you moving through the universe or reality or time or whatever language you want to use. So, so that was the first time I encountered the whole concept of fields, meaning electromagnetic fields or emotional fields, mental fields. There's about a dozen of them I use, and when I say I use them, I explore them to find out where the disharmony is.
Okay.
Right, and so a disharmony represents an interference and results in the lack of energy, or the obfuscation of energy, to the point that you experience something that's not beneficial to you. Kind of like disease or marriage or several other things. Several other things come to mind. So anyway, the whole idea is that if you read this book, you're going to find things that might move you to explore.
Okay.
And so the whole concept of Gravity University was that we would present things that would cause people to explore and find out more about the world or the universe and themselves. And it takes both. It takes both.
Yes.
So
would you recommend that people read this book?
it's kind of like, first of all, yes, but it's the equivalent of recommending a degree program at college. All right, and this is not going to be easy. This requires the assimilation of a broad spectrum of knowledge, not just how to be a mechanic or a doctor or whatever. All of those have a pretty broad spectrum of knowledge inputs. This one, if you follow, it's probably 10 or 15 times greater, because the expansion occurs in consciousness, not just in knowledge. So if you combine both of them, then you're going to be a much different person and a much stronger person and a much more effective at actions, is the language in martial arts. It's movement forward becomes effortless. So that would be the outcome. I do recommend it, but again, it's kind of like prepare yourself for a 3 or 4 year journey just to get to the end of it. And then the other thing is, remember, this is 1973, 4, 5, whatever, up through the late 70s. And all this information is now coming out as everything from AI to whatever. It's coming out as remote viewing. It's coming out all these different things from quantum physics to whatever. All of it is contained as its origin in this book. And that's why I say it's a 50-year anniversary, right? And it's taken me this long to assimilate some of the knowledge in that book, and I wish people luck if they decide to pursue it. You probably will lose the ability to interact with TVs and social media because it becomes fascinating. It becomes something that becomes part of your reality as opposed to watching reality TV.
Yes.
Right? So that's my ideas of it, and thank you for your questions and stuff, because I think it's very interesting, kind of like how people start with things, and this is the way I started. So.
Well, Randy, thank you so much for being here. I can't wait for our next book review.
So thank you. I hope people enjoy, and see you next time.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yay.